The Life Story of Meishusama.
Like all stories, it begins simply on a cold winter's night, when the wind whistled around the eaves of a little single-room wood and paper house, standing on a narrow dirt street where the houses huddled together for warmth. On this cold December night in 1882, joy would also come into this home. A son would be born, and the name they would choose for him would be Mokichi. In time, he would eventually be known as Meishusama, Master of Light. Mokichi began to toddle about and grew into a happy little boy. Soon, he was old enough to help his family sell second-hand goods from their home. He especially loved helping his mother around the house because it made her smile. On evenings without rain, he could be found eagerly pushing the family cart to the nearby temple grounds, where his family would sell their second-hand items to the crowds of people who flocked there. As time went on, he later wrote, "I was able to push the handcart, which bore not only our merchandise, but our hopes for the future." These outings to the temple grounds also gave Mokichi a chance to experience trees, birds, and flowers. He loved nature and being in natural surroundings. Although Mokichi had always been a little weak and sickly, many illnesses began to plague him when he entered school. When Mokichi was a teenager, he often sat studying and reading while the other students had active social lives, played sports, or went on school trips. It was then that books became his new friends. And because of the illnesses he suffered when he was a teenager and later on in life, he had great empathy for all those who came to him with health problems. Despite his illnesses, Mokichi was always first or second in his class. At 14, his good grades helped him gain entrance to the famous school, now known as Tokyo National University of Fine Arts and Music. 6 months after entering that school, Mokichi developed an infection in his right eye. This ended his lifelong dream of studying art. Mokichi's heart was filled with anguish, since no one could predict if or when his eyesight might improve. He finally wrote a letter requesting permission to leave school. More illnesses followed. First came pleurisy, a lung disease. The doctors were able to relieve Mokichi's symptoms once, but when the symptoms returned, the doctors brought him the terrible news that he was now suffering from a dreaded disease known as TB, pulmonary tuberculosis. There would be 2 more times in his lifetime when doctors would tell Mokichi that he was going to die from one illness or another. But he kept a positive attitude and overcame his many illnesses. Mokichi noticed the medications the doctors gave him over the years for his various illnesses helped very little and had bad side effects. Later on in life, Mokichi would often warn people, "Medicine makes our bodies weak." His life in a shambles at 19, Mokichi decided to take his health into his own hands. He experimented by switching to a vegetarian diet, and his health began to improve. Soon he was free of the TB that had haunted him, and as each day passed, he grew stronger. Intent on encouraging his good health, Mokichi took up walking and hiking in the mountains as exercise and continued walking all his life. But suddenly, At the age of 53, his father died. Mokichi's father left him enough money to open a sundry shop where he sold beautiful purses, hairpins, and jewelry. On September 1st, 1923, one of the biggest earthquakes in Japan destroyed most of Tokyo. The destruction of most of the city also destroyed his business. It was then that Mokichi took a long, hard look at his life. He began to wonder and search for the spiritual meaning and purpose of life. There was nothing left to do but to return to God. In 1924, some people began seeing an image of Kannon, God's representative of universal love and compassion, hovering around Mokichi. When Mokichi stood up, Kannon stood up. When he sat down, Kannon sat down. When he walked somewhere, Kannon followed him. Many were puzzled by this, including Mokichi. In December 1926, while meditating at home one night, an amazing thing happened that would change his life forever. Mokichi felt the strangest feeling arising in his heart. It was the most peaceful feeling, but it urged me to speak something out loud. His wife Yoshi ran to get paper, brush and ink, and put everything he said down on paper. Day after day, week after week, for about 3 months, words just flowed out of him. Yoshi dutifully wrote them all down. The words he spoke spontaneously told the story of the past history of Japan and foretold of startling events to come in the future. Mokichi thought the words were important. Kannon seemed to play an important role in directing the mysteriously guided words. Throughout the rest of his life, Mokichi would receive guidance from Kannon and his work as Meishusama, Master of Light. On the edge of Tokyo Bay, east of Tokyo, sits a sacred mountain known as Mount Nokogiri. One day, Meishusama received guidance from God in the form of Kannon, who told him to climb at Mount Nokogiri to see the sunrise. On June 15, 1931, Meishusama followed God's guidance and led 30 people up the mountain in the dark. As the sun slowly rose above the horizon, bathing the party in golden light, Meishusama led the group in a simple prayer ceremony. Suddenly, he experienced a divine revelation that foretold of the change from an age of darkness to an age of light, and of his mission in helping this happen. He now understood clearly that humankind must work together to make this happen. After his experience on Mount Nokogiri, Meishusama became more determined and passionate about helping others in any way he could. He felt Kannon had guided him to pursue this role, so he must do his best. Later, in order to carry on his mission, he decided to create his own organization, known as the Kannon Society of Japan.